Welcome to the Unwashed Asses, episode 134, recorded for Friday, November 8th, 2019. Oh, tired. Been a long day. Been a real long day. Neck's stiff, eyes are tired. Just want to, lay down a little bit and enjoy myself. But not so the case. We got work to do. We got a podcast to get out. That podcast is here for you. I had an idea of what I wanted to record, but a little more research needs to go into it. We're going to try and do a professional educational podcast, and I have that ready for you next week. But in the meantime, let's do another little game preview. Let's talk about what we're playing, namely The Outer Worlds. Picked this up with the Xbox Game Pass last week. For those of you that haven't checked it out, and I'm kicking myself for not listening to Mezzafesto earlier, it's like $1 for the first month and then $5 a month after that. And it's just this bevy of games that you can play on both your Xbox and on PC. And Obsidian went ahead and included, would it be Take-Two or would it be Obsidian? Take-Two would be the publisher, so I don't know. I imagine there's a little bit of teamwork going in there. They went ahead either way and threw The Outer Worlds onto the Game Pass, so been hearing really good things about that from a coworker, so went ahead, downloaded it, and delighted. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it near as much as I am, because Obsidian, their last notable game would be Fallout New Vegas, the sequel to Fallout 3 and precursor to Fallout 4 and then Fallout 76. Longtime listeners will know I'm not a big fan of Bethesda's games, and even though this was produced by a side studio, Oblivion and Fallout 3 left such a sour taste in my mouth I wasn't willing to give the series another go. And to see a former studio or a former developer essentially do their own take on a Fallout game I wasn't interested. And I'm here to say I was very wrong about that. I should not have been so negative towards it, because it's an absolute treat to play. It is, while it does play in a very similar fashion to Fallout, it almost like it takes all the best parts about different games like Mass Effect, Fallout, even TV series like Firefly, and it mashes them all together and gives you this delicious treat of just real competent storytelling and character development and world building that I've not had in the game in a while. And while it's not perfect in any stretch of the imagination, and not what I was necessarily looking for in terms of like a game to get me out of my current funk, it's been a nice distraction. Combat itself plays out very well. You're all in first person. There's no VAT system, but you do have a slowdown time mechanic, which I never use and don't see much point. Dodging is equally as pointless. Then again, I don't play a melee character. Guns, there's only a handful of them available in the game. Sure, you can level up and get new ones, but they all kind of seem to break down into the same archetypes, and they're just a little bit stronger than the last version, which I guess would make sense. This isn't a game that's necessarily built on the idea of you're going to have these powerful, unique guns, something like Destiny. More, you're a captain in space with a crew. You got to get jobs, you got to keep flying, and you got to take down the bureaucracy that is destroying the universe as you know it. So, the name of a gun doesn't matter, it's just how well does it shoot. Alright, we've out-leveled it, let's look for another one that's identical to this. There is an infusion system where you can tinker and level up your weapons with you. However, it gets prohibitively expensive the more you do it, especially with higher tier weapons like the Science and I'm just going to call them exotics. They have a little swirly background on them, to the point where its costs were upwards of several $100,000 in-game dollars to do, and it's not worth it unless you are taking advantage of the glitch which lets you duplicate money. So you essentially have an infinite pile of money. So I've been doing that. With it being a single player game, yes, it may break the experience, but again, I was looking for something easy, and if I break an economy, oh well. That's not what I'm there for. I'm there for the story, and the story itself is good. I'm enjoying more so the characters than the overarching story. The idea is that you are a spacer who was on a ship called the Last Hope. This was launched upwards of 80 years ago to help colonize the galaxy, but it got waylaid, and you were waken up out of your hibernation by a certain Dr. Wells, who is trying to supposedly wake the rest of the crew to take down the bureaucracy that is the board. He needs you to find more chemicals to wake up the other passengers. You were the only one he could get. Wells is on the run from the bureaucracy, and I'm sure there's another name that they call themselves, but essentially the bureaucracy is a group of corporations that have expanded out and taken control of space, and they have essentially abused their people and run them to the point where slogans are everybody's favorite song, and your contract includes you giving up your baby because that's company property, and you dying, well, that's just early retirement, and the company has to take possession of their property once you die once more. It is a mockery of our... Dexter, please don't rub on the microphone. A mockery of our current situation, and kind of plays hand in hand with my own disdain for corporate policies and culture at the moment. So I'm immensely enjoying it. I had started the game with the idea that, typical... not choose your own adventure, but open world where your choices matter in the story. I'm going to go ahead and be the paragon of virtue, which I typically try to be in my first playthrough, and solve everybody's problems. But Outer Worlds presents itself as a game where you might not have an ideal solution to everyone's problems. The typical setup is you go to a planet, there is Group A that has a problem, and Group B has a problem, and sometimes those are opposing, and sometimes they're mutually exclusive, but generally one side's going to get the shit end of the stick and the other's not. Now, there is a chance for a third or fourth option where A, everybody wins, or B, everybody loses. But as you go through the game and start having to interact with these corporations and their employees more and more, I found my own patience waning, and I was looking hard to find a redeeming character, and I couldn't find them. The only people I cared about were already in my crew. The rest could literally go jump off a cliff for all I cared. And so I noticed as I was progressing planet to planet that my choices were becoming not necessarily more narcissistic, but again, I lacked that empathy for the NPCs in the world. So first planet, I'm going to go out of my way and spend a lot of time here and try to figure out a solution that benefits everybody. But after being, insulted to my face several times by both groups that I bettered, fuck these people. I go to the next area, and kind of the same story. I'm trying to be helpful, but kind of, just getting pushed around and getting spit on. So by time Planet 3 rolls around, it's no. What serves Christian the best? What lets him have the most fun with the game? And at this point, I am outright screwing over everybody I can without killing them. That is something I do enjoy, is that it gives you the option to, if you want, you can totally murder everybody. Yes, there will be consequences. You might not be able to progress certain quest lines, but the option is there. Case in point, there are areas that you can sneak into. There is a stealth element to the game, but you can choose to ignore it, like myself. But in the stealth areas, or the restricted areas, you have a cloaking device which will change your appearance and give you the appearance of somebody that should be in those restricted zones. The trick, though, is to find a key card somewhere in the world to change your appearance to the appropriate one. If you don't find it, the cloaking device doesn't work. So when you go in there, you'll be attacked on sight. And on Planet 2, I ran into a couple of those zones and didn't realize I needed that key card to make the cloaking device work. So I walked in, immediately started getting shot, and I'm wondering why. And then immediately stopped caring and would just gun down whoever was in the way. I'm like, all right, I'll deal with this later. I can reload a save if I need to. That being said, several murders later, I'm now missing the guy that I was pretty okay with when I had landed on the planet. You know, he's just essentially the TSA version of that planet. He's just checking things out. I told him I'd do him a favor, and next thing I know, I unintentionally shot him in the face. And every time I go by that checkpoint, because they don't clean up bodies, I see his corpse laying on the ground. Like, oh, I feel a little bit bad about that, but at the same time, not as much as I probably should. Dexter? Sorry. He's a cat that never knows exactly what he wants. He'll instead walk back and forth 5 times and try and get your attention while constantly butting his ass up against whatever he feels like. And in this case, it's a microphone. So it's not a good experience for anybody. But, and again, that's kind of where... Cat hair on my glasses. Where the strongest point for Outer Lands or Outer Worlds exists is in these characters, and it reminds me a lot of Mass Effect in that regard, where your interest lies in your crew members first and foremost. Where anytime you get on the ship, generally they have something new to say. If you've spec'd out your stats right, you can get a little bit of insight and talk to them or dredge something up that they weren't necessarily telling, but you can get that insight into. And everyone's really well fleshed out. There are a couple, I don't necessarily care for, but they're still compelling characters, and I'm interested in seeing their side stories play out. There's only 6 of them to be found in the game, and I will say the game itself does seem like it's moving at a fairly brisk pace. Like I'm going through it faster than I would have expected to, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because at this point I'm not looking for a long-term commitment in a game. I kind of want to get in, get out, and have fun along the way before I go back home to the wife that is Destiny. And for that, Outer Worlds is serving its purpose very well. It makes me wonder if they're going to do something along the lines of DLC, like Mass Effect 2 and 3 did, where you can get additional crew members and there might be another planet or two to explore. But it does give you the ability to do a little bit more in terms of subsequent playthroughs, where, again, there are multiple options to handling each situation on each planet with each different person. And so, yeah, you could do a Paragon and Renegade run, or you could, be the devil incarnate version of this universe where everything just gets slaughtered that you see, and, see how long you can go. Because I will say that using that money glitch and being able to level up all my equipment, combat was a struggle at first. Now, not so much. I'm playing on normal, and it's fairly well broken at this point where I'm not worried at all about dying. Not that death is a huge deterrent, because you can do quick saves, and on that note, quick saves are something I'm not used to any longer. I'm used to the game automatically saving my progress, and so when I forget to hit the quick save button and then I die and lose a half hour's worth of progress, it's a little upsetting, but it's a different kind of game. It's a throwback to games of yesteryear, like I said, Mass Effect, Dragon Age. It strikes heavily of BioWare in its prime and makes you wonder what could have been had BioWare not turned to shit lately. So yeah, as long as you have Windows 10 or an Xbox, download Microsoft Game Pass. Download Outer Worlds. You'll be done with it within the first month, and for $1, that's an incredible deal. I've got about 17-ish hours in. From what I've been reading, you can beat it in about 25. I don't know if people are skipping stuff or if that's getting through the bulk of it, but again, relatively on the short side, but that's enjoyable in its own right. So that's going to wrap this episode up. If you have your own thoughts, concerns, criticisms, critiques, complaints, or just want to shoot the shit about the Outer Worlds, drop an email, theunwashedasses@gmail.com. It's down in the show notes. And, of course, this year, help the show grow. Let a friend know. They can get this show wherever they get their other podcasts. And that's going to wrap it up. We will talk to you guys next time. But until then, blood for the blood god.